If you're watching this video, I'm sure I don't need to explain what Forsaken is. Whether you love it or hate it, you know what it is. Forsaken released to the public December 25th, 2024. There was some public testing stuff before that, but December 25th was its official release date. And as I'm writing this, December 25th, 2025 is just a few days away, meaning Forsaken is 1 year old. I honestly had to make a video about it, as Forsaken is what I built my channel off of. So I'm going to be talking about the history of the game a little bit, both the good and the bad. Just know that this video is much more subjective and personal than it is objective, because there's been a lot of complications in Forsaken recently, a lot of which I don't have the full picture of, and obviously everyone has their own opinions on it. But this video won't be overly negative or positive, just kind of what I feel, you know? And this video definitely will get very personal, but I'll try to save that for near the end, since I doubt anyone cares what the green furry feels. So anyways, enough yapping, and let's go back to the beginning. I first learned about Forsaken just a few days before release after seeing some TikToks of it. While I'm sure there is a lot of people watching this video that do know what it was like when it was called Damnation, or when it was in its testing phases, but I don't personally know much about it, aside from what Ball Necrosis would say in his videos. Is that how you pronounce that? Ball Necrosis? I don't know. I was already really into asymmetrical horror games as I played Pillar Chase and Dead by Daylight, so naturally I tried it on release, and I hated it.
I hated you.
Yeah, I hated Forsaken when I first tried it, which is probably because, you know, Jason and Noob were horrible starter characters. Although eventually I would try it again, and then that's when it all clicked.
I get it.
I'm gonna try to tackle one thing at a time just to make this video feel more organized, so let's go. Most importantly, the gameplay. Pillar Chase felt too punishing for survivors at the time, and Dead by Daylight was, well, Dead by Daylight. And there weren't really any other good ASIM horror games on Roblox because they never really had that much depth. But Forsaken, it was fun, for both sides. Playing Survivor felt like you actually stood a chance, and the abilities were fun to use. Killer was also fun, but you definitely had to try a lot harder if the survivors knew how to play, just even a little bit. But the gameplay loop was really fun. Sure, it wasn't balanced the greatest back then, but it was fun. The gameplay was the reason I fell in love with Forsaken back then, and it's the reason I still play it to this day, even if it's not as much. And also, the roster in general was really good. For survivors, you had obvious choices like Builderman, Shidletsky, Noob, but then there's more obscure ones to pick at, such as Elliot, Guest1337, 007 and 7. Because honestly, I feel like most ASIMs have kind of boring rosters. Like, I feel like they only pick obvious choices or what's popular at the time, and even when they do pick obscure characters like 007 and 7, I guarantee you it's probably just because Forsaken. But Forsaken's roster from the beginning was really cool. Guest1337 from The Last Guest was, while it was popular, it was kind of forgotten at the time. And choosing 007 and 7, who was an exploiter, to be a survivor instead of a killer was really cool. Speaking of exploiters, the killer roster. The killer roster originally only had 4 characters, which, let's be honest, we haven't gone that far, but it is still kind of nostalgic when it was just these 4. The choices were much more obvious, the standard Roblox hackers, 1X, John Doe, and Cool Kid. But then there was also Jason Voorhees, mainly inspired by his appearance in Area 51. I always loved old slasher films, and Jason was actually one of the things that caught my interest with this game. So him being here was cool. Especially when you'd see people draw the 4 killers, it was nice seeing Jason involved. It's like my boy was finally getting put back in the spotlight after all the years about a new movie. But, you know, this would change, but we'll get there. But gameplay wasn't the only reason I fell in love with Forsaken. A good game is one that can make you care for it even outside of the game itself, and Forsaken did that well with its characters and lore. The characterization and lore for characters like Shidletsky, 007 and 7, and Cool Kid, and even the little bit of crumbs we got about Builderman. I just loved it all so much. But then you had the completely original characters. Not gonna lie, Chance was always kind of boring to me, but Two Time and Azur's lore was, well, it was really popular for a while. It still is, but like back then, you'd see it everywhere. And me making a one-off joke about Azur in that goddamned Forsaken Smash or Pass video, that ended up spiraling into me genuinely really liking the character. Too much. Although something that was debated a lot was making Cool Kid a 10-year-old. I think it was a pretty charming lore choice, because the idea of 007 and 7 being the adoptive father of a rowdy, chaotic kid is really endearing, especially since 007 and 7 literally created Cool Kid. because most other Cool Kid versions I see are kind of mid. But I do think this did come with its problems, because Cool Kid and Forsaken doesn't really have that unique of a design. Well, yeah, the killer version in-game is a big red meat monster, but before he was Forsaken, he was just Cool Kid. And you know, there's other versions of Cool Kid unrelated to Forsaken, which look the same, and you know, some people like to ship that version of Cool Kid with character. You can see where the problem comes. They just should have made pre-Forsaken Cool Kid much more distinct, you know, to avoid all that. Anyways, now that I'm done with that side tangent, the next thing I want to talk about regarding Forsaken when it first started out was the community. I feel like for a while, Forsaken's community has been questioned, but for a good while, I don't think it was really that bad. I feel like people just exaggerated it. By all means, no community is perfect. There's always going to be that group of misfits. But back then, the only major issue it really had was the community was very horny.
There's so much porn!
Like, by all means, it did lead to genuine problems, like the Dream Game skins being removed. But communities being like that is not very rare. But otherwise, I think it was really great back then. Because the game just came out, the community was a decent size. It was small, but not tiny. It was nice to just scroll through TikTok or YouTube and see animations, fan art, and other stuff with the Forsaken characters purely just out of love. And in general, every single thing that was added or changed wasn't heatedly debated as much. And once again, because the community wasn't that big at the time, you could actually make videos and people see them instead of being buried under 50 other million videos. And the last thing I want to talk about from back in the day was just, in general, the vibe. The OST, the models. It was really just something special. It was something that I feel like couldn't be recreated. So yeah, in my opinion, Forsaken was just perfect back then. The gameplay and just in general theme was fun. The community, while did have its problems back then, for the most part was good. Just everything else in general. But eventually cracks would start to form. I want to talk about the little middle period. Back when Soul still owned the game, but it had still been out for a while at that point. Forsaken at this point has been out for a few months, and the main issue that was starting to arise was just lack of content. Dusakar took quite a while to come out, and then even TAF also took a while to come out after that. I do believe TAF did come out when Soul still owned the game. I could be wrong, but either way, as a player, content felt really slow. And as fun as the gameplay loop was, playing with the same 4 killers over and over again definitely was getting just a tad bit stale. Forsaken's community was also growing quite a bit at this time. Nowhere near the amount it is now, but definitely growing quite a bit, meaning that there's definitely a lot more people to debate things. But that wasn't the main issue of this time period. Oh, how I wish that was the worst it got. It's about time the villain of the story makes himself known. Soul-driven love. I'm gonna make it known now, I'm not that educated on the whole soul-driven love drama, because it is quite deep. It's not as simple as EDP. There's a lot of people involved, a lot of things. There's a lot of accusations against Soul, some of which apparently aren't true, most of which I feel like are proven to be true. But the one thing you cannot deny is that Soul is just not a good person. I'm not going to get too deep into it right now as we're not at that point yet, but it was around this time that things started surfacing about Soul. I can't fully remember what exactly it was that was being spread around, but it was definitely enough to cause quite a big stir and a lot of collabs from the game got pulled. But I know the evidence wasn't that great back then because there was a lot of support in Soul, and even I back then, I held quite a bit of sympathy for Soul, which definitely has changed since then, but it was certainly the first bump in this rocky road. But at the time, we thought, surely it can't get any worse than this.
But it did get worse.
Oh boy, this is where all the bad stuff I have to say is. By this point, a lot more stuff came out about Soul, and ownership of Forsaken was transferred. I've completely re-scripted this part of the video as I want to be much more careful with what and how I say things. Too many people have made themselves comfortable talking about this without fully understanding everything. But let's start off simple, gameplay. The gameplay is basically the same. Aside from some new characters, the gameplay is still really solid. While it still suffers from the lack of frequent updates problem, the Guest 666 update was really good in my opinion. In fact, it kind of revived what I loved about the old Forsaken for quite a bit. There's definitely been a lot of debate about the newly released characters and their balancing, but I've never been one to care too much about a character's strength. To me, I think they're all fine. Obviously not perfect, but it's impossible to make a character perfectly balanced. I feel like some people need to learn to just be happy with what we got. Although Nosferatu definitely was released in a way too overpowered state. That one I can't justify the hate for. So gameplay is still what I liked for the most part. What about the game's general vibe? Well, this is where things get a bit shaky. Forsaken over time has been slowly gaining a bit more cartoony. It still keeps the horror aspect in some areas, but certain areas definitely have gotten less dark. Most notably is the music. I'm not gonna pretend like this is some crazy hot take of mine, as this has been repeated multiple times, but the old Forsaken soundtrack was just 50 million times better. The original composer had some stuff happen that made them either leave or get kicked off the team, so the tracks were eventually replaced. Music opinion is subjective, but I personally think the old soundtrack not only fit the game's vibe much better, but some of the tracks just in general sounded better. That's not saying that all the old ones are better. Some of the replacements were better, most notably Plead. But the lobby theme, the last man standing theme, the default killer themes, especially 1x1. Seriously, what is the new 1x1 theme even supposed to be? The old ones not only sounded kind of better in general in my opinion, but they all had that sinister undertone to them. You know, something that's kind of important in a horror game. The new music feels like they kind of forget what game they're even supposed to be for most of the time. But Vlad's themes are amazing. Vlad's the GOAT. Another part of the vibe I feel like kind of lost its charm are the skins. Back in the day, every character only had like a handful of skins, and the ones they did have made sense and felt thought out. They either matched the character, or the few that were references to something entirely else still kind of fit. Take the Sunderland skin for example. At first, the idea of a James Sunderland skin for Shedletsky makes no sense. But not only does the moveset kind of match, but before I believe it was hinted at that Shedletsky in 1X's lore is directly inspired by James Sunderland and Pyramid Head. But nowadays, every character has a boatload of skins, so no one skin feels that special anymore. And they just kind of add random stuff for sake of it. Forsake it? Whether it be Hatsune Miku, some random game collab, or just a completely random outfit that doesn't really match the character. 80% of the time, I don't even know who I'm chasing unless they use an ability. I know saying the game was Fortnite-ified is cheesy, but I can't really think of a better way to describe it. And another thing is the community. It has gotten much bigger. And I mean like, it's massive. I see Forsaken everywhere now, even real life. I saw a kid dressed up as Two-Time for Halloween. I will admit, as a longtime player, seeing the game finally get a lot of attention is nice, but the game getting this big definitely has its problems. The one that personally matters to me the most is Jason. Due to the game getting big, Jason's inclusion made copyright a potential issue, so they redesigned Jason to look bad.
Even though it wouldn't have been a problem that they just changed his name and they have a bunch of other copyrighted characters in the game already still, but you know, whatever.
And a bigger community also means a lot more people to debate things. Every single little thing that is changed or revealed feels like it causes a lot of discourse now, which can lead to the community feeling really negative. Which, you know, Twitter will be Twitter, but it still has gotten noticeably worse. And also, I feel like a massive community also makes it harder for people to shine. If someone draws a cool artwork of a character, there'll probably be much less eyes on it as there's so much other content that might overshadow it. You might disagree with that though, but I feel like most people won't disagree with the next thing I want to talk about. The owners. Hitoko and...
Who is that?
There has been a lot of controversy surrounding Forsaken, with these guys being at the center of it. And while I have kept my eye on it, I'm not fully educated, so I'm gonna try and tread lightly here. Hitoko and the other one's ownership skills are, bad. I have no experience with ownership, but it doesn't take a war general to call this out. There has been a lot of stories I heard that paints Forsaken's management behind the scenes in a pretty bad light. There's a lot more serious things, like apparently some devs saying racist things or people still talking to Soul, but I'm not informed enough about that to say anything. But the big thing that everyone has been talking about, Soul-driven love getting 25% of Forsaken's profits. Now, let's get it out of the way. This isn't by choice. There's dumb legal stuff forcing them to give 25% to Soul. Legal stuff can be a nightmare. But this situation definitely has gotten worse due to the way they have been handling it, especially with Hitoko kind of just straight up lying and saying Soul wasn't on Forsaken anymore, which technically is true since Soul doesn't help with development. But they definitely knew what they were doing, leaving out that little detail that 25% of the game's profits go to them. There is an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement involved, so I'm not sure what they could and couldn't say. But either way, this situation's been talked about by much more informed and smarter people many times, and I'd just be repeating it. But something I do want to mention, because it has me very concerned about the game. There were apparently leaked DMs of Hitoko talking about the idea of just moving Forsaken to another game and switching the name to avoid Soul's 25%, which first of all, that's just not possible. I'm no legal expert, but I know enough to be able to tell that's just not how it works. You can't just do that. But anyways, in the DMs, Hitoko was saying that they were worried the game wouldn't get popular again. And that, plus some other things, makes me worried that that's exactly the only thing that they're worried about nowadays, is how popular the game is and stuff, how big it is. Adding the weird incentive to invite friends, changing the game so it's playable for all ages, and the more cartoony stuff. It all just feels like the game's just trying to grow as much as possible, and I'm struggling to put into words why I feel that's a negative thing, but I don't know, it just feels like the owners don't care much about the community. I know that's a wild thing to just say, but with their recent decisions and the way they act, I just can't help but get that impression. But here's the thing, who else would they even give ownership to? Switching owners isn't as simple as people seem to think it is. If they give ownership to someone else, they could completely steer the game in a whole new direction, and that may not be a good thing. The things people love about Forsaken could just vanish if ownership was given to someone else. Most people have been talking about giving ownership the ball in the cross sets, which I am conflicted about. On one hand, he absolutely does care about Forsaken. He would treat the game well. But he has talked about his vision for the game multiple times in his videos, and it's very different compared to what Forsaken is right now. By all means, he does have a lot of good ideas, and a lot of the things I did like about Forsaken was thanks to him. But the entire game being shaped in his image, I don't know, it would definitely have its downsides. I'm sorry if this part of the video has been quite negative, especially the specific people. I just have been very disappointed with the owners recently. Note how I say the owners and not devs. The actual developers are not affiliated with the choices the owners make. I've seen people harass the devs who are just doing their jobs or what they love. Don't do that. I get it, you don't like Soul, none of us do, but you are actively making the situation worse. But yeah, I don't want to ramble for too long. That was Forsaken's history, I guess, in a nutshell. Both the good old days and modern times. But we are not done yet, because I want to give my more personal feelings surrounding the game. This section is mainly meant for reoccurring viewers, so if you're new here, then I don't blame you for leaving. But anyways, as I've said before, I played Forsaken the day it released, a year ago now. While I may have hated it at first, a few days later I eventually fell in love with it. And honestly, Forsaken kinda changed my life, for the better. I've been doing YouTube for a few years now, but my content never really went anywhere. I made Dead by Daylight videos that would barely even get 100 views at most. But one day when I was starting to get into Forsaken, I noticed nobody made a video about the 2-time baby skin, so I thought I'd make one myself. And that video alone might have just completely changed everything for me. That video got a lot of views, which encouraged me to make more Forsaken videos, and consistently they would get thousands of views. It was everything I ever wanted for a long time, and it was finally happening. Of course, there were a few other random videos that weren't Forsaken that would also do pretty well, but it was then I realized what I finally wanted to do with my channel. I wanted to make Forsaken videos. Not even just because it gave me the success I've been craving for so long, but also because I wanted to. I loved the game, and the fan base I was building up did too. I'd upload Forsaken videos of me just playing the game, enjoying it. And that's not really something I do anymore. Even before this, I never really did that. I'd only upload videos about new things. But I genuinely enjoyed making these Forsaken videos. It was like I finally found my face online, something people could know me for. And I started recognizing recurring names in the comments, or people that would friend me, people that would end up becoming some of my best friends, most notably a certain Liam Stuff, Juan, Twilight, Splashes, all people I had the privilege to call my friends, a privilege I didn't really have until this point. Before my channel started doing well, I was in a bit of a dark place. For years I was just kinda alone. I had no friends online or offline. But of course, thanks to my channel, thanks to Forsaken, that changed. So even if the game is controversial, even if the current owners are kinda driving it into the ground in a way, no matter what happens to it, I will always remember it for what it has done for me, for the better place it has put me in. So seeing it going down this path with all the drama and stuff, it really upsets me on a personal level. While yes, it is just a Roblox game, it still means far much more to me, so it's not as simple as just quitting the game if it gets too controversial for me. Especially since I do genuinely enjoy playing it, even to this day. But I feel like I just can't make videos about it anymore. I can't keep doing what I love. Not only are most of my friends not even into the game that much anymore, but in general, a lot of people just don't like the game now. And even if I did just ignore all of that and continue making Forsaken videos, it's kind of a gamble if it'll even do well. Forsaken has got so big that there's so much other videos that may outshine yours. And while yes, I do mainly make videos just for the love of it, because I enjoy it, I can't deny that there is that part of me that just loves the attention that I get when a video does well. It's not about money or anything. I'm not monetized. I don't make money off these videos. But part of me just likes having that spotlight on me. I really hope Forsaken can somehow get its act together someday. I really don't want the game that changed my life for the better to die out in this way. I don't want to leave it behind, but either way, happy birthday Forsaken. Thank you for everything. And yeah, and also thank you for watching if you're still here. I don't really got much more to say about anything, I guess. The script's long enough, and this video is long enough. Damn, 20 minutes. So, sorry about all that. Bye, I guess.